Hello and welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. A lot of news to talk about here for AEW and WWE. The status of the Revival, Matt Hardy, Jeff Cobb, Vickie Guerrero, and certain arenas booking these shows. And if you want the news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. So let's start with the Revival. They've seemed to have, circled the wagons again, if you will. And they tweet out, it seemed like a curtain call from their previous sighting at NXT when they had that tag team match with the Undisputed Era, hinting that they're leaving WWE. And now, according to Steven Fernandez of PW Insider, Scott Dawson and Dash Wilder have applied for some new trademarks. Top guys, say yeah, and no flips, just fists. This goes on top of the already filed trademarks for Shatter Machine, FTRKO, and a couple other ones as well. So is this an indication that they are leaving WWE, or are they just making sure they're protected regardless of their decision?
Well, I think that certainly we've seen this from other wrestlers, not just guys that have been trying to leave WWE. I mean, as guys who are truly considered independent contractors, you're seeing more and more of this. Last week, I think we were talking about Mox leaving, doing something similar to this.
Yep.
And, that doesn't necessarily mean he's a guy that's going to leave AEW, but I think more and more guys are trying to protect the integrity of their gimmick or their persona, if you will, because we've seen issues in the past where guys have left a company like WWE and they couldn't necessarily bring that character with them. That kind of even got them over with the crowd to begin with. So I think there's a little bit of that. I think that the Revival is being smart and kind of following suit in this. Think back to even Cody Rhodes trying to get some trademarks for some larger profile WCW pay-per-views. So I think this is a trend we're going to continue to see happening. But on the other hand of this whole thing, I do think that the Revival is on their way out from WWE. Certainly a tag team that is supremely talented. You look at some of the work they've had on NXT and even on the main card, when they want to have a good match, they can have a good match whenever they feel like it.
Right.
But they've kind of been underutilized. And like I said one time when we talked about this before, it seems like you're either the top team in WWE or you're non-existent. Whether that means you're at the top team at the time, and when you're not the top team, it's back the line, you're not really going to get much airtime. For whatever reason, the WWE never truly got behind the Revival. And I think it's the writing's on the wall. I think they're on their way out.
Yeah, it always surprised me why they were never pushed in WWE because, they're pretty decent promos. They always do what they're asked to do and do what's best. It's not like they really look bad on TV as far as what they're given.
No.
What they're given is bad, but what they do with it, they do to the best of their abilities. As far as this, filing for trademarks, look, even Charlotte Flair and Andrade recently filed for trademarks of previous past, just in case they, eventually leave WWE. They want to make sure whatever they can use without any interference with WWE. Same with Jon Moxley and many other wrestlers. Now it's becoming the way of the industry, I guess. So you just want to make sure you're protected at all costs. I do think this is them, hinting that they are leaving WWE. Is it for AEW? I think most people will say that it is. I mean, one thing you have to say right now, as far as the wrestling industry, is AEW probably has the best tag team division, and just adding the Revival will just help that. Not only just because it will just bolster an already deep division, but these are guys that are so strict about tag team wrestling and how it works.
Yep.
They can teach some of these guys like Private Party, like the Lucha Brothers, like Jurassic Express, who, they're still a little green and they can learn proper tag team rules where, it gets a little chaotic and those rules aren't exactly followed through in some of those tag team matches.
Yeah,
so.
It's been one of the things that has been a knock on AEW since the first episode. Certainly there are the top tier tag teams that can work the more traditional style tag team match. Now, I think that adding a team like the Revival, to your point, not only gives them credibility in an already deep tag team division, but also helps ensure that these younger guys, which let's face it, a lot of them before they were actually thrust into the spotlight of being on primetime national TV, they weren't really working larger shows,
Right.
certainly not on TV. So it was kind of like you get pushed right in that position immediately. You're expected to kind of learn on the fly, get yourself over, and do everything else in between. But adding a team like the Revival, who's already been in some high-profile matches, not only in NXT, but also the WWE, knowing that they've kind of perfected the craft and the art of professional wrestling, the more traditional style that most people are accustomed to, that not only helps on the tag team side of things, adding another really good established tag team, but also being able to mentor some of the younger guys and make sure that they learn how to put guys over without having to go to, these crazy type of aerial flips and all that stuff, which when you do them and you pick your spots, it's great. It's going to mean even more if you're picking your spots rather than just like the fast-paced bump after bump after bump, which eventually the fans will get used to that and they will stop reacting.
And that's
in my opinion.
I'm sure that's one of the reasons why they're going to use they file for the trademark, no flips, just fists, because wherever they go, that's something that like people recognize with the Revival. And if you use that in AEW where everybody is flips and dives and, spot, these guys are completely different, and that could work to their character and even make them huge top heel tag team in AEW, which, you know what? That might be missing right now in AEW. They don't really have that top heel tag team. Yes, there's a Dark Order, and that's about it. So,
Butcher and the Blade, but they've kind of jobbed out to those teams.
So, I mean, it could definitely boost out the heel side of the tag team division, but another guy that's rumored to be leaving WWE and going to AEW is Matt Hardy. He posts another video on his YouTube channel, this in the Matt Hardy in Limbo series. He talks about his match, or what was supposed to be a match with Randy Orton that gets canceled because of the headshots onto the stairs. And he says that a second coming of the new and omnipotent version of Matt Hardy is coming. And in the process of this, he talks normal. Then he does this weird pitch shift where his voice gets deeper and then goes into the broken character.
Almost like he's possessed.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and a lot of people are hinting at that when the voice shifts down, it sounds very much like the Exalted One. So is this omnipotent version of Matt Hardy the Exalted One?
I honestly don't know what to make of it. This is either one of the biggest swerves in professional wrestling right now, meaning he's doing all of this and it's just going to be the Woken gimmick version 2 in WWE, or he's reinventing himself yet again or going back to what worked outside of the WWE and he truly intends to leave. I don't know, because every time I watch one of these videos, I feel like the door is open for him to stay with the WWE, and especially if he stays on Raw. I trust a guy like Paul Heyman with this character more so than I did when they initially tried to debut it, where it was kind of like, we're going to test the waters with this, but not go all in. Raw has been consistently good, in my opinion, for the last 4 to 5, 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got some guys over. So if they take another risk with a guy like Matt Hardy, what's the worst that could happen? People don't get into it. So what? You could still fall back on, he's still a member and a tag member of the Hardy Boys. You can always reunite them. So I don't know. I mean, he could wind up staying with WWE. He could end up leaving. I really don't know where I stand on this.
I don't know if it's exactly going to be AEW. I don't even know if he is going to leave WWE. I think a lot of people are assuming now he is going to leave, especially because he tweeted out something recently where he mentions the date 3/2/20, which happens to be the day he becomes a free agent and his contract expires with WWE. But there's also, he just recently tweeted compliments to Rob Van Dam, and then Scott D'Amore chimed in and said something along the lines of fixing things that were once broken, maybe hinting that he could be going back to Impact, where the broken character was started. And I said that originally in our All Elite Wrestling draft.
And he even said something like that in one of his videos about going back to where it originated or something. Something along those lines. So,
but I think where this character's going, we have seen Matt Hardy in so many different ways. We've seen the Extreme, Team Extreme Matt Hardy, Hardy Boys. We've seen version 1.0, big money Matt Hardy, broken character, woken character, Omnipotent. That's the key prefix there.
Exalted one.
Well, not exalted one, but Omni, when I think of Omni, I think omnidirectional, like a microphone, just being the video audio nerd in me. That comes from all different places. So this omnipotent character could just be a mix of all his characters. And you see that in his YouTube videos, where 1 minute he's fine, and then he switches to Big Money Matt. Then he switches to version 1.0 Matt and starts spewing Matt facts. Then there's the broken character. So I think that's going to be some kind of schizophrenic version of Matt Hardy. Where that ends up being, I think, is either NWA or Impact.
Or maybe a different persona in all of them. I have no idea.
It could be. But this is what's great about Matt Hardy is he's keeping you guessing. It's not definite. Oh, he's going to definitely be AEW. He's definitely going to be the exalted one. He's definitely going to Impact. He's definitely re-signing with WWE. No matter what decision he makes, he knows it's what's best for him.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He doesn't have anything left to prove. He's pretty much accomplished just about... he's never held a major championship when you consider like the heavyweight championship in WWE, but some guys don't necessarily need that to define their legacy. Like Matt Hardy is going to be a Hall of Famer without question, I'd imagine, as the Hardy Boys. I don't know if I think this character, whether it's the woken gimmick, the broken gimmick, or this whatever, all-encompassing gimmick, whatever you want to call it, I think it's better suited for the more hardcore fan base, which you're going to find in like an Impact, in a Ring of Honor, in AEW certainly. I don't know if it's meant to be accepted for the masses because it didn't necessarily work in WWE. And that's partially because the WWE kind of blundered it, didn't necessarily go all in with it. But then again, we've seen that with other guys too. Nakamura, you bring that up all the time. Some guys just don't work when they go from a smaller, more passionate fan base to the larger fan base for the masses. So seeing that he has nothing left to prove unless they truly go all in with this, I think that he's probably better suited leaving and using this persona elsewhere.
Now you said all in. Is that a hint that you're saying AEW?
No. I just coincidental. But
yes, I know.
Yeah, and if there is anywhere for him to go, I mean, why not go to... If AEW wants to sign somebody, why not sign a guy like him?
Right. And speaking of AEW wanting to sign somebody, according to Dave Meltzer, a offer has been extended to Jeff Cobb. And part of the offer is a New Japan clause where he can be in both AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling, similar to what we see already with Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley. I believe Kenny Omega also has this in his contract, and even the Young Bucks. We put this out on Twitter, and that tweet exploded on our Twitter account at SCPB Podcast. A lot of people do like the idea of AEW offering something like this where, you know what, if you're only needed on Wednesdays and occasionally on a Saturday, why not let them do whatever they want in Japan?
Yeah.
Do you think it's a good idea with the New Japan clause?
I think it has its pros and its cons, but I think right now, until further notice, the pros exceed the cons. And the reason I say that is this. Look, like we talk about all the time, AEW is still a relatively new wrestling promotion. Even though they're relatively new, they've been successful in competing with some form of competition when going against WWE, whether that's contracts, talent, whatever. They need to try and attract different type of talent, top tier talent from wherever, whether that's New Japan, whether it's Ring of Honor, Impact, wherever. If they can get a top tier guy, I think they should sign them. And if they have to do certain creative things like this, where they can say to a guy like Jeff Cobb, look, you can go to New Japan Pro Wrestling if that's what he wants to do. If it means signing him to a contract or him saying, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to sign with you, and then just him going exclusively to Ring of Honor or working in Ring of Honor and them allowing him to go to New Japan, I think AEW should say, okay, we'll be open-minded, we'll let you do this. Now, if AEW continues to grow and it ultimately becomes just as big as the WWE, I doubt we'll see certain things like this. But I think right now, seeing as though they're still such a new promotion and still trying to attract new talent, I think they have to do stuff like this. And I think they're going to continue to do things like this, especially for a guy like a Jeff Cobb or even a Lance Archer, somebody like that. If they're going to let a guy like Kenny Omega, who is one of their biggest stars go and do that.
And an EVP.
Exactly. Why wouldn't you let a guy like Jeff Cobb, who still certainly well known within the wrestling industry, maybe not as big as a Kenny Omega, why wouldn't you let a lesser guy like that do it?
And
so I think they will do it.
I think also AEW would love a partnership with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Yeah. That's just me speculating and just thinking out loud. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying that's the rumor. I just think that's what they want to do. And this just furthers, you know what? If a Jericho, if a Moxley, if a Jeff Cobb, if a Lance Archer are all there and they all go to AEW, don't you think they're in the locker room talking to someone like Kazuchika Okada or Tanahashi or Naito or even the younger guys like Jay White or Evil Sonata going, hey, listen, see if New Japan will offer you an AEW clause on the side. And there doesn't necessarily have to be a partnership, but you know, this could be something that could be a new trend in wrestling where, you know, listen, I won't do anything in the States that are competition, like a Ring of Honor, Impact, NWA, WWE, but outside of North America, you know, let me do Progress. Let me do New Japan. Let me do All Japan or Noah or Dragon Gate or any of these other promotions. Yep. I think that's going to be the future trend. And eventually we get that possibly territory system in a worldwide spectrum. So we'll see how that goes, but it's going to be very interesting. Let us know in the comments what you guys think of that as well. But let's move on to a very interesting situation. The last couple of things we'll talk about is this, you know, it seems like there's a war between AEW and WWE that's brought on by the fans. So anytime someone says something, it's always pick a side kind of thing. And these last bit of news, we'll clump them together. First off, Vickie Guerrero recently said on her podcast, she was interviewing Dave Benoit of all people, that since she appeared on AEW Dark, WWE basically have cut communications with her and have ghosted her. So you're not going to see any future interviews for the time being with WWE superstars. Also last week, we learned that from Fightful.com that the Heritage Bank Center in Cincinnati refused to book AEW because of their relationship with WWE. Are they related of this whole like pro WWE, anti AEW thing? Is this fans just kind of lumping two together when they're not necessarily need to be? Or what do you make of this?
I just think, honestly, it's business. I think on one end of the spectrum, the whole thing with Vickie Guerrero, you've got, so Vickie obviously is probably the most notable for her time in WWE.
Right.
Obviously being that whole GM role and then her going to AEW. So now anytime she's going to have her podcast, like it's almost like she's established she was in WWE, right? So it's like she's a made character. If she goes on AEW, it's like that just adds more credibility to a company that's competing with WWE. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're calling up somebody who's kind of like a manager on the side in a lesser known promotion. This is like an individual who was very prominent, held a very prominent role within WWE. Granted, it was quite a while ago, who's going over to AEW in one way or another. And now I know she even said she hasn't worked or been contacted by WWE in 2 years. So, you know, what is she supposed to do? And I agree with her in that way.
Right.
But, you know, now WWE, if they see that she's going over to AEW, what are they supposed to do? They're in a tough spot. She's in a tough spot. Booker T did this though, and they didn't really make a big deal about it. It wasn't actually.
He was at StarCast.
Well, he was also, I believe, on the Jericho cruise too.
He was, and so was Ric Flair.
Ric Flair, but you know, those are bigger guys. Those are bigger name guys.
True.
So, you know, I think WWE is kind of picking and choosing their spots here. I feel bad for Vickie. As far as the whole stadium thing, not the stadium, arena. I'm not surprised by that. And the only thing I'll say about that is this. So WWE is still the biggest wrestling promotion in the world right now. Mm-hmm. Knowing that you have WWE coming to town means you're going to sell a shit ton of tickets. I don't know if you're going to sell out every single time like it used to, but they'll sell quite a bit.
Right.
AEW, while it's very popular right now, they're not going to sell as many tickets as WWE. So if AEW is coming to town and Arena says, okay, we'll let AEW have a show here. Now Vince McMahon says, well, we're not going to run your arena anymore. that's a tough sell. That's a hard decision for an arena to make, to choose the smaller promotion that is competing with WWE. It's not like they're WCW back in the day where they're literally neck and neck, both huge companies. It's, a smaller company that's trying to work its way up. And if they cross Vince McMahon, he doesn't want to run an arena, he's not going to do it. So that's kind of like what the choice is, in my opinion.
Right. So here's how I think of, well, first I'll start with Vickie Guerrero. It sucks that she has been, severed communication from WWE and can't really talk to people and try to get interviews for her podcast, but I don't see why she just can't directly talk to certain people. And I mean, maybe unless the wrestlers are still cutting ties as well and not talking to her and ghosted her as well. So that there, I think eventually time will heal those wounds and she'll be able to talk to WWE personnel again. I'm not too worried about that. The arena thing reminds me a lot of what happened with Survivor Series and Starrcade. So for those that don't know the full story of that, basically Survivor Series and Starrcade, they were trying to get pay-per-view people to sell, or the cable companies to sell out their pay-per-views. And they end up where Vince McMahon would say, if you carry Starrcade, you can't get Survivor Series. And if I might not have this 100%. So if anybody wants to correct me, let me know in the comments. But basically that ended up where Survivor Series and Starrcade ended up on the same day, and the cable companies had to choose between the two. But then the cable companies eventually said, listen, we carry both of you or neither of you. So they've ended up, that's why you had WCW have pay-per-views earlier in the month and WWE have them on a different weekend. So that never happened again until we had, Clash of Champions and WrestleMania. So it was always that. It's a similar situation to that. If I didn't really explain that right, I apologize, but Google's your friend on that one. This is a very similar situation where an arena might be afraid to book AEW because WWE might say, like you said, we're out. And here in Connecticut,
top guys out.
Right. Here in Connecticut, I feel the same thing is happening with the Webster Bank Arena and the XL Center, where AEW is not getting booked because WWE runs shows on both. We just had a takeover at Webster Bank Arena. We had Money in the Bank at XL Center. The last Raw of the year was at XL Center. So they do a lot of shows there.
They've done WrestleManias in Connecticut.
Yep.
So it's not like, look, WWE, I know a lot of people want to hate them and a lot of people want to talk about, oh, Vince McMahon is a greedy guy. It's like, what is he supposed to do? And this is when you talk about competition. We're not just talking about like in ring. Okay, what's better? What's this? What's that? It's like WWE knows it's established. WWE knows it has a lot of power. These are the types of things that you're going to see continue to go on. It's not any different like we talked about before. Cody Rhodes goes out and tries to get certain trademarks. Like these are the little things that the two companies are going to try to do to try and one up another. EW, we're going to give you creative freedom. We're going to give you the right to go work in Japan. WWE is not going to do that.
Right.
So it's kind of like you get to pick and choose. There's going to be these little, back and forths, whether it's running an arena or not being able to, have a podcast and have this talent on your podcast. I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon. I think if anything, if AEW continues to grow, you'll see more of it.
Right. So let us know in the comments what you guys think about this. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for news, reviews, and conversations on all things pro wrestling, subscribe, hit that bell for notifications. Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.